Sachin, one of the things that we have been talking about, right? We work with a lot of organizations. We've seen a lot of organizations in our career. We
Yes.
work with startups also, other people's and ours. Um, One of the things that I always was fascinated with is organizations getting in way of themselves, right? And that unfortunately or fortunately creates a lot of opportunities for consultants. But lately I've been thinking of is tech coming in way of tech. What I mean is sometimes you heard about that, the rise of bullshit jobs, right? Sometimes I feel that even in tech, I think we have created these ways of doing things that I think are stopping tech from really exploding, right? I'll give you an example. I was talking to a business leader a few weeks back or something, right? And not few weeks back, this was actually a few months back, last year. And there was a discussion going on in team, this React Angular, right? And what he told me is sometimes I feel like you guys, just, you techies just create job for yourself. First you do this, a Vinaya library, we have to do this. And I feel those are the places where, we really come in way. And I think the way the software is being developed, programs and everything is coming in way of how technology really can manifest itself. So I thought we'll discuss this and
Sure.
see where it goes.
Absolutely. And then I think the comment you made about the technology getting in its own ways, I think it is a little harsh in terms of the manifestation is definitely one way to look at it is, okay, we are creating jobs for ourselves. But the second thing is we we do not have a definite way to say some technology has advanced enough so that we need to make a shift. So most of the time, it is so blurred line between transition of technology that you are fighting for those small incremental gains. Example would be is between React and Angular, 99% of the choices are made by does your team has skills about that, or does your tech lead actually knows
That is
React?
an example of tech coming in way of tech.
Absolutely. The reason being is if I am not comfortable, and we debated about this. So one of my startup was actually on PHP, and at that time I was coming from a company which was very heavily advocating at the time Ruby on Rails, and we have delivered so many projects on Ruby on Rails. The product was getting matured. I had expertise in it, and I was the first technical founding member. But we already had contracted out product development to a company, and they chose to do PHP.
They were a PHP shop.
They were a PHP shop. Yeah. Now I was inheriting a code base. It was not much, 6 months in development. So I debated with our founders that why shouldn't I just scrap everything what we did and go with Ruby on Rails from scratch? And I bet them that whatever we have built on PHP in 6 months, I can do it in 2 months if you give me a chance. But they were already towards the bottom end of their seed funding. And they were saying, this will actually delay our MVP release to the product of the product. And the market, we have already spoken to people, they have agreed. So if this release goes in, we will change our technology. Yeah. Now, the flip side is we never changed technology until we sold the company. Yeah. We never rewrote the product. Point is, the tech choices are mostly people dependent. Sometimes some tech groups want to try the new shiny thing. And there is hardly somebody can do anything about that unless you have this a central mandate which talks about Java 1.8 or nothing.
Or yet another opinionated founder or CXO who is like, no.
Yeah. But it is always better than team signing up for a new risky technology than somebody forcing a safe choice because people will actually make mistakes in any technology.
Yeah.
And I have seen bad code in every language. So if somebody says that we should switch to a new technology because it will reduce number of errors, I think they are selling snake oil. Run away from that technology as fast as you can. There is no such technology.
The it's a little bit of digression, but when you said the code, we never rewrote the code, so I always, so there is one tech analogy that a code once written goes into production, never dies, right?
Yeah.
The whole Y2K was a big opportunity because we haven't learned anything, but actually what we have learned is the fact that things will not go away. And this is not just a tech thing. I tell being like in product management, a lot of people, I early in their careers, so I tell everyone this: okay, let me write something, I'll send out an email and later I will edit it, or I'll do a better version tomorrow, or I'll do a cleaner version tomorrow. This is unedited, this is crude, I'll do it later. What I remind them is that, the first time you do something, do it in a way that it's gone. It has left your inbox, means now it represents you. It is official, right? You will never get an opportunity to go back and do it properly. So do things properly, think about it, do it the first time. Otherwise, it's double the work. And somewhere I feel that, sometimes startups push this. Let's do something. Let's get it out of the way, which I think is a good decision because of some other reasons. Not let's do it this way, we'll do it properly later. That is like, living in a dream world. You'll never write it. Once it goes into product, it's gone. But the reason behind it, if it is that, I need to get value out so I can get something I can test, I like that. But if someone is doing that thinking that tomorrow they will do something, but it is never going to happen. And at some point, if your startup is successful, some CTO down the line will abuse, hey, that time they did this, now it is this legacy code. And then legacy transformation will become one big project. And there are books written on legacy transformation. It's a whole industry in itself.
But yeah, Dinkar, you bring up a very valid point, and we went through the same journey. Twitter went through the same journey. What you just spoke.
Yeah.
They initially wrote Twitter on a certain tech stack. They rewrote it completely because it was not scaling, and they kept struggling. I don't know whether they did like 3 or 4 rewrites of Twitter platform until they moved to the current incarnation, which is completely evolving now. But what's your take? I mean, as a product manager, do you go to market fast to test your hypothesis, or do you actually build a perfect technical solution?
Obviously, no one wants to build a perfect technical solution, right? So my worry is this is a very binary thing, right? Either you do this or you do that.
No, I mean, like, okay, let me actually rephrase it, because I am a techie. Now, if you are holding the product manager end of the spectrum and I'm holding the tech end of the spectrum, this must be the case almost in every startup.
Yeah.
That there is a tech co-founder and there is a product co-founder.
Yeah.
And now, what is the right method? I know that there is no perfect answer, and either extremes are bad. We know 3 places are bad. So how, rather than saying it depends, what is
I wanted to say it depends, but I'll tell you what it depends on, right? So who is your user? So for example, if you're a startup and you're creating something for a bank, right? That means, first of all, even if it is a simple, let's say it's a banking application, a person comes to the office, logs in, and clicks this application which tells them good morning. That is it. That's all this application does. If you want to put it into a bank, imagine the type of certifications, analysis that will happen right before it reaches, right? So that means in that scenario, the definition of let me test something totally takes a different meaning, right? Now, if you're producing something, for example, my startup guru, it was like for some application, the end user were kids. So you have to think about privacy, COPPA laws and all that. So even if you just put this application, you click on it, it says good morning. You have to think of thousands of things properly before you put it out like that, right? But if but if your startup is somewhere where you could start with an Excel sheet as a tech solution, because there is workflows involved, there are people involved, and the lowest in that scenario you go with that. So what is the definition actually differs, right? But within your domain, within your industry, what is that minimum you first get to that, right? So for in that, the perfection that I'm talking about, Sachin, is not in um, in the completeness sense, right? The I am a big fan of sufficiency over complete, right? The perfection is on that sufficiency level, that whatever is the sufficient, you need to do it, do that properly. Don't leave any things there. That is what I was hinting at. I don't know if that addressed the thought you had in your mind.
Right. I mean, let's peel it off a little bit, right? See, in heavily regulated environments, your point is absolutely valid because, as you mentioned, the child-oriented software. I worked in education. It is regulated. There is FERPA
Yeah,
compliance. I worked in health tech. In health tech, PII, PHA, health information, PHI, that is heavily protected. And even to get the product deployed into a cloud, you require different sorts of agreements with even cloud providers to
exactly.
even be able to use and store data
And
properly.
if you're crossing borders, then it's a next level of data management. Yeah,
Absolutely. So there is no dearth of roadblocks for you to go to production. And also, this is the reason why these industries and these sectors are so difficult to innovate in. The cost of the barrier of entry is so high, the cost of entry is so high that
that
most.
and that is where this whole thing comes up. That and I feel a large part of that is tech coming in way of the tech. I think the way software is being built today is being built with the idea that software is a consequence of programming. I feel that software should no longer be consequence of. So, for example, right, Hello World application of a bank should have all these regulation things and all that just baked in, right? Some consortium of banks, some organizations who work with banks a lot, create custom software, create products, right? They should have, like, I mean, when I used to write code in Visual Studio and all that, right? You could actually you could actually start with the whole everything, right? They were trying to do that and go immediately start writing, because so much of bunch of code used to come, right? Those were the fourth generation Delphi and all those things, right? And that was the whole idea of that. And I think that, and Sachin, I want you to revisit the discussion we had on building block of software has to change. And in that context, I feel that the building block of banking software should change, so that this whole idea, right? Innovation should happen at the pace of software, at the pace of thought, because all these things today we consider as a burden or a drag should be given, right? It should be like a library that you include and it took care of everything. So yeah, now I'm leading you, because I want you to talk about it, and we couldn't finish the discussion last time. With the Amazon's new offering, how do you see that changing?
Yeah, it's not a new, but there is a trend of similar offerings happening from Amazon, right? Is if you see 10, 15 years ago, 15 years ago, I have not seen cloud. Only cloud which I have seen is something like virtual private servers in the cloud, like in some data center, right? At that time, cloud was not the most popular term. But then when AWS came in, they started calling it cloud very.
Was Amazon the first one to use? I wonder where did the term cloud first start? Who used it first? Do you know?
I don't know. The cloud term, I don't know, but AWS did not call themselves cloud at that time. They used to call Amazon Web Services because they had provided certain infrastructure services which you could programmatically access and provision certain things in the cloud.
Now it's a bad name, right? Because they're doing much more than web services.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the interface still is a web service. So, for example, if you see their programmatic access to provision, like how these provisioning tools communicate with AWS to provision, that is still through web service. They are not like going away from the way programmers access it. But what has changed is that they lean more towards enterprise offerings. And now almost everything what you can do through provisioning is possible through some alternate UI workflow. And that takes this to a whole next level, because now people are able to provision things, upload things, experiment with these things without writing a lot of code. Earlier, when it started, all we used to have access to is EC2 server instances, S3 for storing objects, and VPC and
IPs.
SES. They had their elastic messaging system, right?
Yeah.
So all these things, if you see, these were not a big in terms of like building blocks. But today, if you see AWS Pinpoint, let me share my screen.
Share the correct window.
Yeah, I will.
We are recording.
Sure. So if you see this, in this, if you see what we are looking at is this middle part. Earlier, Amazon used to say, we provide you infrastructure as services. They are IaaS provider.
Yeah.
But now the infrastructure is no more limited to only S3 bucket or Redshift or EC2 or Lambda. They are providing full-blown end-to-end solutions. Example is Amazon Pinpoint is a solution where you collect your data from these data stores, do your segmentation, do your campaigns and journeys mapped into Amazon Pinpoint, use their notification mechanisms to send notifications to their users via email, push notifications, SMS, voice, you name it. And to even generate a voice, it is now completely automatic. You can use Amazon Polly to generate a custom voice message. And then when you do all of this, you can also try track the engagement using their analytics solution. This in one solution was earlier broken into 5 different building blocks.
Such a quick question about this. So this, I don't know much about Amazon Pinpoint. So are these specific to are these specific, or are they calling out a business use case? Does audience manager, does Amazon Pinpoint is Amazon Pinpoint a collection of these, or these are some example of business that a Pinpoint can implement?
This orange box is what Amazon Pinpoint provides.
Okay, so today they're focused on this business use case.
Yes.
But now, what they have done is that, all the startups who were working on engagement data, channel, transaction message, they're going after them.
Yes, because there would be a company which will just do 2 portion of it. I know. So if you have seen Mailgun, they said we do
used to use constant contact.
Similarly, right? Now they used to do transactional messages plus engagement data. And how they used to do engagement data, whether the email is opened or not. Now they are not limited to that. They are saying we will collect all your data. We will do the segmentation. Earlier, segmentation used to be a different service. Then
different product lines, even from startups to large enterprises around audience management.
Correct. And then the campaigns and journeys, how you want to do it, basically sending different customers on to different journeys. These all used to be highly sophisticated pieces of software.
Yeah.
And
what
then
them? Gone?
That is exactly what is happening. If you see,
so now software is not getting in way of technology, right? So what they have essentially done is they commoditize this and made it available as a service. So it's your banking all the regulation, everything commoditized as a service go.
Correct. So, and we will come back to that, what you just said. We'll come back to that about how they are doing banking. But what software industry is looking at is what are the horizontals across industry. So every direct to consumer application, whether it is retail, whether it is pharmaceutical, education, or you name it, they have this a complete layer of customer engagement and their engagement related activities, whether it could be marketing, whether it could be newsletter, whether it could be notifications. And that entire thing can be driven now using Amazon Pinpoint. And the Amazon Pinpoint for Amazon or AWS becomes a vertical that way. So if you see, they are taking all these common use cases and making it enough configurable so that anybody can adopt it by just writing glue on top of it, which is specific to them. So if you see customer and usage data, send your first and third party data to Amazon Pinpoint. They are saying we will provide you the funnel and access how to push your data into Amazon Pinpoint and rest all of it.
And that data itself is coming from Amazon S3, EC2s.
Yes.
So it's staying within the ecosystem.
Staying within the ecosystem.
And I'm sure while we are talking about Amazon, I think at some point this is interchangeable. I'm sure, I don't know if GCP has exactly the same thing, but I'm sure they're going in this direction. They're also coming with these business as a primitive, business, what do you call, not business, but a business workflow as a primitive, as a service.
Correct. But this has been happening anywhere, Dinkar, where there were solid ecosystems. If you see, I remember there were few features which were actually available as paid softwares, but Apple just said, I'll integrate that within my system itself. And suddenly those companies and businesses were killed. Example is, if you remember, there was this.
I remember Sachin, sorry, I remember when they announced iCloud, there was a tweet by Dropbox CEO. Oh shit.
Yes, because what happens is that these companies are actually providing these more sophisticated solutions at either fractional cost or no cost at all. I mean, and that is something which is scary. I know there was a Flux app which used to, depending upon which time zone you are in, what is your local time, it used to change that color temperature of your display so that the blue is removed. But then that became a standard feature in iOS and Mac. And yeah, suddenly nobody needed to buy that.
Mac, you can say keep it blue all the time. Right? Effectively, yeah.
Exactly.
Night shift all time. Yeah.
Yes. And then suddenly that Flux app was no more required by me. When people used to actually get text editors, different kind of text editors, suddenly the rich text edit, with Windows 10, it became much superior. So people's need to actually get a more rich editor just became obsolete because WordPad is good enough for majority of population.
On Mac, I'm happy with BB Edit.
Right, but BB Edit is a paid software.
Yeah, at least 30 days are free. First 30
yes.
days. Yeah. But so, it's a paid software, yeah.
Right. So that's the whole point, which is like coming down to is whenever there is a tighter ecosystem, and that's what my worry is. If you go to a cloud and you start actually getting into their systems, the vendor lock-in is real thing because now you are within the ecosystem and the cost of change is going to be extremely high when you go to this higher level of software. As long as you are at a primitive level, these are interoperable due to technologies made possible by Kubernetes, containers. But if you start using APIs, which are now these specific ones, if you are not thinking about this ahead of time, there is a serious lock-in possible with this.
I sometimes think this certainly for so. I've worked with some banks, right, in capacity of as a consultant, right. So, and I know if I go to some folks with this idea, right, the first question banks should do it, but or maybe my question is ultimately who should do it? Like we can't leave everything with cloud providers, right? Um, Now, if you look at the whole stack of organizations, right? There are these technology providers, there are these custom software providers, there are these integrators, there are these run the for 10 years kind of, and then there are the actual customers who are using this stack to conduct business, right? Uh, who should you, I would hate that if everything is like Amazon is the only one who's creating these uh, these business process as business process as a service kind of thing. I mean, cloud, so much of concentration should not happen at cloud. But then second question that obviously will be asked is like, then who should do it in this stack, right? And I don't have an answer. I mean, I know some banks have created some interesting products, they have open sourced it, but again, their whole reason behind that was something else, larger good with the community and all that. But do you do you have a thought like, or let market forces decide?
I think anytime anything becomes too commoditized, right?
Yeah.
Then there is no uniqueness. And businesses which we want to create uniqueness, they would stay away from commodity. As far as it is utilitarian, they would go with it. Example would be is, let's say uh, I have a certain way to manage my customer journey through Amazon Pinpoint. And since we are talking about Amazon Pinpoint, it is not such a great product that I need to say, okay, let's focus on this. But if there are certain features available in AWS Pinpoint, and all the major retail chains have started using the same product, then everybody will have same tool set to work with their customers and their journey. And whenever that happens, typically somebody will say, this is not good enough for me. I would like to engage with my customer in a different way. And that could spawn next set of features. And that is where a really solid understanding about what you want to achieve as a differentiation comes into picture. Example was all the banks pretty much stayed on the same software features for internet-based bankings. And then suddenly these new entrants were saying, we are not doing anything different. What's the difference? In fact, the only difference between bank A, bank B, and bank C became is that I like these banks, these banks because maybe they had a couple of more better features. I had earlier credit card or my salary account was moved into this bank. Nobody used to.
Times you have a bank account because that's your salary account, especially in India.
Correct.
In US also, once you have it, you kind of, it's the inertia that retains customer more than anything else.
But we never saw banking as a differentiator. But when suddenly these new entrants came in and they said, they just destroyed this status quo. They challenged it completely. And then that drove a new fintech boom. And earlier, all fintech was actually resolved around how we can provide little more value-added service to the customer so that we can charge more premium to them.
Sachin, I'll give you an example. So you remember I had gone to J&K. So we decided to my native, we'll take my dad's car. It didn't have that tag. Fast tag. So as soon as you leave Jammu, there are a couple of places where you have to pay. So what they have done is just before that, there is one fellow sitting on the bike. They put this and all that, and he's selling FASTag. And he was from IDFC Bank, right? So I told my dad, wherever you see, stop, we'll get it. So he stopped and he said, I've never heard of this bank, right? So because typically bank was branch, there is like manager or something, out Sarji and all that, right? Suddenly, not just these new entrants, but I think new use cases are also facing. Now this fellow is sitting there, he like Sarji, though he did everything and all that. My father is not that tech savvy. He's more of, he's a doctor. He can save lives better than he can probably dial my number, right? So he was so happy, like take everything, he did everything, sticker on, and we moved, right? And he had never heard of this bank before. So on a highway in J&K, he encounters this bank as a kiosk of a person who's probably, that guy's not even an employee. He's like some agency, something sitting there. So I think these new cases, not just new entrants, I think in a lot of consulting and a lot of articles and a lot of the journal people talk about the new entrants, neo banks, they're challenging. I think more than that, it's the new use cases that are erupting, that are challenging the banks. Yeah,
I think
sorry
you
for that.
you made a very good point, right? Is earlier bank was a very high friction business. I met one person who used to run not run, but he was working in an NGO, and they used to do micro loans. These micro loans were like 1,000, 1,500 rupees. I don't know whether you heard about them, right? This is a very big thing in India.
Yeah.
So, and then he told in India,
couple of our colleagues have come from those kind of stuff.
yes, yes, and uh, the most shocking statistics he told me, and this is before this Jan Dhan Yojana. Okay, so prior to Jan Dhan Yojana, nobody was forced to go and open a bank account.
Yeah.
India had less than 10% population having one bank account, at least one.
Yeah.
So for such a large country, having such a low banking penetration was a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, and the reason was that these banks used to like shoo away people who want to open account in rural areas.
I think it was capacity issue also, right? They were the process was so complicated. Holding an account was so complicated. It's like uh, maybe not to defend, but I think like, okay, I have like 3 customers. Where do I focus, right? So I think a lot of that behavior was driven by capacity issue also.
Right, and that's why these archaic rules, right, is you don't operate your account for 3 months. I will charge you 140 rupees
exactly.
fee.
Yes.
I mean, it was literally extortion. The
Yeah.
money is sitting there. It doesn't require maintenance, but they will charge you 140 rupees, saying you are not operating your account. You should come and operate your account. But when I come and operate, you don't want me to like bother you, because every time you provide service to me, it's a bother to you, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're going back to your point of use cases. I think that is the real reason. And suddenly it's like all the stars were aligning properly. India actually went through demonetization. We had to open a lot of bank accounts. And when we opened a lot of bank accounts, a lot of wallets were opened. And these wallets, and luckily, I think Raghuram Rajan, when he was governor, he started this wallet-based banking. I mean, like this, the circular and the operationalization of that. And I don't know whether he was just cutting the ribbon, or he was the like bringing this idea into India, right? But all this innovation which happened prior to that, linking phone number to bank accounts, then using these mobile wallets which are linked to your phone numbers, suddenly phone number became more important than Aadhaar. And now what you just said makes so much sense, is that UPI destroyed Paytm, but that UPI opened so much business. I mean, the best example which came to my mind is banks were sitting on a piece of data, Dinkar, for almost 50 years. They never made anything out of it.
They didn't have that creativity, or there was no use case to do something with it.
Correct. And suddenly now, these new entrants also expanded the user base. They literally multiplied it. Now we have more than 35, 40 crore bank accounts, and wallets are just insane. The bank accounts itself were now 4 to 5 folds, and the wallets are more than that. So I think what you just said makes total sense. Is use cases will drive the innovation, and they will push the limit. But Dinkar, do you also see that it will be winner takes all?
See, let's take more than looking, Morpheus in Matrix says I know this not because of what lies ahead, but I know what has happened in the past, right? So channel Morpheus, right? If you look at it, I don't see in financial. So how many winner takes all hasn't really happened that much, because the moment someone becomes a big winner, right? There is a disruption. There are these startups, they nibble, and they break, right? Imagine in India, State Bank of India, right? In spite of State Bank of India, right? At one time, State Bank of India was in every corner, right? Every city, because it was mandated by government. So when I used to travel in J&K, like rural, Pahadi, go to any mountain area where there will be a small SBI branch there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how that was, winner takes it all. They were basically, you are the winner, right? No one is else there, right? So now there's SBI card, they'll be standing outside malls. So do you want a card? Right. So somewhere, if you look at it, I don't believe winner takes it all is a genuine fear, is something to worry about, something to protect against, but doesn't happen because there's so many forces which break, um, you know. But I think that's a digression. So coming back to the use case is driving a lot of innovation. Coming back to and then stepping, I'm like retracing the stack. So coming back to business of a bank or any organization, commodity and differentiating, and the commodity workflows will end up with cloud and these some companies in the stack, but the bank will retain the things that they feel are different. And I don't know, honestly, in my guts today, I understand what the differentiation for banks would be, but I'm sure there are much smarter people in banks who probably know that. But, okay, now we walk back the stack. And so coming to that diagram that you had of Pinpoint, right, where we were saying that the business flow will become a primitive. And that could be one way where software is not coming in its own way of expanding. I think that will take care of a lot of these things. That means when I started software development, I started learning with C, and Letter C by Yashwant Karnetikar was our, and pointers. We had a PC. We create a TSR. It stays in the memory. That was power programming, right? And today that programming has no sense, has no meaning. Today it has become something else. What do you think will happen to programming as a paradigm in this world where business flows are available as primitives? Will software become art of integration rather than art of creation?
I think
Derivative art.
yeah, I mean, if you see, that has been always the case. And I used to always tell my friends and family, although my degree is computer science and engineering, we were actually application software programmers.
I
We
have
never,
MC, so I'm more true to reality than you are.
yes, you are. And I think that was the case. We never invented something.
You never engineered software as such that much.
Correct. So you needed to just take the building blocks provided by somebody and do it. Obviously, I could go and create, let's say, a framework which other people will be used. But I do not see a framework as engineering. What I still believe is that the real science part of computer would be inventing new data structure or creating a compiler which actually goes cross-platform. That requires a lot of like primitive understanding about how things work. Or what Jeff Dean did once. There is, I don't know whether it is true or not, but I have read it. So it must be true somewhere, right? Everything you read on internet is true, right? So once Jeff Dean actually wrote code in C or assembly language, which used to compile square root faster than the assembly code, which directly calls on the CPU, because that whatever routine is hard coded onto a CPU, that is supposed to be the fastest, right?
Yeah.
But Jeff Dean invented an alternative set of instructions. If you execute them, it used to calculate square root faster. Now that is pure science, because you had
Yeah.
extreme understanding about how things work. And I can keep applying that knowledge that you need to understand fundamentals. So example is what one of our colleague is doing, right? About distributed patterns.
Yeah.
If you understand those patterns, you can understand the scaling issues at large in cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is one way of looking at it. But majority of software developers, including myself, they focus on applied engineering. We understand the problem and we make the solution from available building blocks.
Hmm.
That is 90% of. And again, somewhere I read on internet, so it must be true. Uh, so somebody said is 80% of all the software which humanity ever needs is already written. Now, this is like a statement, right? Which in Ratatouille, Chef Gusto makes, right? Anybody can cook, something like that.
Yeah.
Is 80% of the software means the building blocks are there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what you need to do is you need to just make sure that you are creating new use cases out of it, or you are improvising on what you did, or you are creating something which is very nuanced, very specific to a purpose-built application. For example, when you are building a car, as and this also you alluded at the beginning of our conversation is depends upon which domain you are trying to solve. That will those constraints will be applied. So if I'm building software for car, probably it will be headless, it will not have a console to work with, and it has to operate all the time. When the car is running, it cannot shut down and restart itself, right? So the reliability becomes the most important factor. So what I will have to do is use these building blocks, but uh, focus at most onto the reliability
Yeah.
rather than focusing on more features.
Yeah, see,
So
Sachin, this reliability I want to spend some time on because I'm really scared of this aspect, right? Because now if you look at building block, right? Uh, 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 Give me some time to
yeah,
express my thought here. So you've seen that movie Get Shot, right? Get Shot, I think, right? So on this CDO disaster, right? So two people are, I think, playing some game. So hey, 10 rupees or $10, I'll win this, I'll win this. Someone bets on them. Oh, I'll bet on this person winning. And then someone bets on this person, and this kind of becomes a big chain. So very derivative trading, right? Yeah. Now, what I fear is these building blocks, right? So I'm using this building block as something. Using this because we are now in that phase, right? There are framework, per framework and framework, something, and now it is expanding, right? So one minor flaw here has earlier one flaw in library affected the users of that library. Now one flaw in library affects like log4j thing, right?
yeah,
Imagine,
I was about to say that because
yeah,
unless you have been living under a rock, Log4j might have given $1 billion worth of consulting business to organizations worldwide.
yeah,
Just go and replace, update this library.
yeah. And imagine the amount of computing gone into it, environment, right? One bug, what was the, so that is what also scares me about these primitives, this
And
reliance
there
on.
are more examples of, like Log4j, Spectre vulnerability, which was actually not fixable easily using software.
Hmm.
If you remember, in the last two,
No,
three
I
years,
don't.
there were like bunch of vulnerabilities, zero-day vulnerabilities were detected
Hmm.
in fundamental CPU instructions, which are
Wow.
hardwired.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
now these are Intel architecture couldn't change it unless they release new CPU.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, and that was it's like because those are those instructions which you build software on top of it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And suddenly these fundamental instructions had a bug.
So somewhere when we are thinking of this, like a business process as a primitive, and we are thinking of all these, we use the word it should be reliant. It's a very agreed upon term, agreed upon focus. I think what should also change in our thinking, and probably we need tools and assets around this is, um, other than just, some tools. Hey, what do you do? I work in security tools, right? It's a very adjacent thing. It's not central. I think this has to change somewhere. These reliability assessment has to become, security assessment has to become a very serious consideration, like, something as central as checking in code. And I don't see, I see DevSecOps happening, a lot of things happening, but I somehow feel that that is still happening in the world above. I don't know what's happening here, because I'm sorry to beat on Log4j folks, right? Because in their world, they did something. I'm sure they have DevSecOps, they have a lot of things, right? But they could not test, or they couldn't imagine what will happen to the product in the wild, where it has such this network effect, geometric square progression effect, right? So along with these primitives, then the way we certify something that yes, this is a good, that has to become massively complicated. I don't know what that means, what security world is thinking about that.
Right. And you are actually coming to a point where what is the right thing? I mean, Log4j was one single place where the vulnerability lied. We could also patch it. And luckily, it was an easy fix. Upgrade to the latest code and you were done with it.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you, Dinkar, there are millions of places where they could not just simply drop in latest Log4j because the compatibility issues of the new version.
I think we are facing one situation where we are using some piece of software that is using something else.
Yes.
And now this is beyond our control, and they're saying, no, it's okay. They're like, don't worry, this is okay now. But we are in,
Yes.
Now we are on the top of that building block and we're stuck.
Yeah. And suddenly what is happening is softwares which Log4j is not even going to become a problem. Those software also are asked to upgrade themselves. Sometimes the developers don't have access to the code as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then suddenly this is a problem now. So this created a very big cascaded effect. And this is something which can happen more and more if you start using this building block. But luckily, software as services prevents you from doing this.
Like, that's what I was thinking. Just because of this services aspect, now whatever is happening here can update, and all you care about is this interface and things coming to you through that.
And if they get hacked, then God save you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I can imagine. Sachin, we talked about this the stack, and you talked. I mentioned BB Edit. You mentioned one of the things I have always been curious about, and this is something that after our initial discussion, now I ask everyone, and I have asked you this, but we had discussions on this, but maybe today you can put it together. So the software we use in our daily lives, out of your profession, right? What's your life stack like?
I mean, that also we can spend dedicated time on that, Dinkar. But in a brief, I think more than ever, since we are actually working from homes, we are actually constantly trying to figure out 1,000 things. Earlier, if nobody could walk to your desk, nobody could actually assign you a task.
Yeah.
But now I am sitting as a electronic container on internet, so people can actually direct messages at me, SMSs at me, phone calls at me, emails. And we just keep adopting new tools every day. So
and we are not just now working for the boss, right? Or our company, we are working for the delivery person, right? So
yeah,
now, like, all kind of things, and we have to respond to so many things, all happening online.
correct. So, and that limits your ability to also manage your life. So what I think is, in if you want to survive in today's information overload world,
Yeah.
or collaboration overload world,
Task
you need
overload world.
task overload world, you need to figure out that what is your lifestyle, and in terms of like how you want to manage the number of threads which are open with you right now, and also be able to attend to them and say no when it is required. And that itself is a big thing. And I would like to also talk to you about what are the tips and tricks
Hmm.
you are using in your life to manage your async load, basically.
Right.
And the second thing is there are tons of tools and configurations available.
Yeah.
So what everyone needs to figure out is their method. And
Yes.
what method worked for me so far is that I use getting things done method for task management. So I use things software on my Mac for it, which is actually on iOS as well. So that is my single place of collecting all the tasks. But what I found very interesting about things is also compatible with other ecosystem products.
Hmm.
So if you are using an email, many times I receive an email where I am not the primary actor on the email.
But Sachin, I want not the professional, not the because I know you're veering towards your professional
Yeah,
stack, so your life stack. But actually, your point is that now the life stack and the professional stack has merged.
correct. Because
Do
that is
you do this with your personal mails also now?
why not? I mean, like
Okay.
there is a credit card payment due, right?
Yeah.
And now, uh, I mean, like recent and Indian banks actually changed some rules from 1st of
Oh
January.
yeah, yeah,
So you need to go and update everywhere you had a subscription, right? And despite of making that change, it just doesn't sometimes go through.
yeah.
So you have to keep a check that, okay, let me get circle back to this after a week or so.
Yeah.
So I found that as much as possible, do not separate this from your professional. Just have one place, because if you have three places you write your tasks, there is guarantee that you will actually lose some.
You'll get a lot of beating for this. There is this whole. I personally don't. I'll come to that. Like separating work and they say it life, and I don't get it because for me, with startups, with this, work is not something different than life. It's part of my life. Yeah, work and personal maybe, but I don't know what this work-life balance means. It's like you should have a body arm balance. My arm is part of my body. So anyway, you'll get a lot of comments back from people who believe in that segregation, but it works for you, so great.
Right. Because if there are certain number of tasks which I need to do, I need to also see that I am not ignoring my personal task,
Yeah,
because we already isolate our machines, right?
yeah,
And when the work machine is dedicated and I'm focusing on work machine, I may not have the email account accessible to click on my to do to go to that email, because the email account is not configured on my work machine.
yeah, yeah,
But it is important that when I would like to go on my other machine, I can also take a look at all the things which are coming my way in the next week,
yeah.
so that I can work around. And this is just, I think, convenience. But if tomorrow you started separating these two sections, and luckily any getting things done software will allow you to label, dissect, so you can actually in a click of a button see things which are related to personal and things which are not related to personal life. So I think it is possible. And some people also, like I do have two, three sections of my life, right? There is a personal, which is like home and something. There is financial. There are hobby related things which I would like to do.
Exactly.
Let's say I'm working on some side projects. I'm writing some articles or studying something
Yeah,
that has certain tasks which are different than my work related things. Having all these things, at least one single pane of glass view of all the tasks everywhere, helps me better plan for my days and weeks. But this is just part of task management, and there is a knowledge management thing which like I recently came to know about this Zettelkasten, which we will speak. I think we are running away out of time today, Dinkar, but I think we should talk about that, and we can see. And I would like to know how you manage your knowledge as well, because I think Today we read. I mean, there are 5 things from this discussion I have made note of,
Yeah.
and I would like to go back and I would like to double click on that, get more details about it. So, how do you do whenever you are listening to podcast or reading a book or watching a YouTube video? You hear about these interesting concepts which you would like to go back to and gather more knowledge. So, I mean, I would
I
prefer to
think we
talk
should
about
have
it
a,
sometime.
I think this subject, I think next conversation we should focus on this. Both of us should spend more time on this. But I'll give you a quick review of how I am doing it. So I have a bad memory, and what I've found is that writing down helps. So I've tried a lot of online things. I in fact, when you first introduced these tools and these techniques to me, I tried them also, but nothing is more everlasting for me than writing down things, right? So I have now a stack of diaries, which actually, and to come to that point, you'll talk about in Zettelkasten when you can go back and look at all the knowledge and connect and how it helps you with connecting. For me, it's still, I need that physical interface, the pen in hand, the writing down, the deliberation it takes. So I'm not that digital in my thinking, and we'll come to that sometime. But the way I write sci-fi also, Sachin, is I first read a scientific concept. I write it down, I understand it. Then after 2 3 days, because I read so much of these stuff, I come across something. So my magic number is 3. When I'm able to create in my mind a connection between 3 different concepts, in case of sci-fi stories, 3 different scientific concepts, if I feel that there is a connection, okay, let me make that connection in form of a story. And that's how the sci-fi comes, right? So for me, connection, making this connection is very important, right? The magic number is 3. After 3, there should be something, but same thing as you do, right? But for me, writing it, the paper, stationery, the pen is very critical for me. The keyboard does not work for me. And when I am listening to stuff here, there, luckily, while my memory is bad, my capacity is low, my lookup is very good. So I'll just make 2 3 words, and the moment those 2 3 words work, like I can bring back the whole memory. So that is what I do a lot. So I have a lot of these days. It's for
Yeah,
I love this. They had a shop in Bangalore, Muji. They shut it down. I love this brand because they don't have any, like my T-shirt, right? They don't have any text on it. I like that brandless concept. Anyway, a digression. But this was great, Sachin. I think we should do this again, and let's see where that conversation goes, and let's see where this goes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dinkar.
yeah. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah.